All right, I been talking about doing this, these YouTube videos for a while now. Put this phone down. Welcome. So, part one, quick video. A lot of information going on regarding Coyote swaps. I figured why not, kind of make my own. I am planning on doing a low budget Coyote swap, trying to keep overall cost sub 10,000 is the goal. So I do want to document. I'm going to take videos and photos and all the good content over the course of this entire swap. I do want to make it easiest for people and have fun doing it. So I got my whiteboard here, as you can see. Quick little Coyote swap 101. I don't know all the information yet. I'm still kind of learning as I'm going here. Obviously, in doing a Coyote swap for a Fox body, you need to source your engine. So a couple different options, a couple different routes you can go. For you who want to spend more money, you can obviously get the 5.0 out of a Mustang. For people like me who are trying to do this on a budget swap, you pull it out of an F-150. F-150 motors are going to cost you a lot less than a Mustang motor, and we'll get into the differences over the course of this video and other videos. I do want to kind of get different videos for different options here. So Ford started making the Coyote in the 2011 Mustang. Gen 1 was 11 to 14. They did do some changes in 13, 14, but that is a Gen 1 Coyote, 2011 to 2014. Gen 2 Coyote, they made a lot of changes. They took a lot of R&D from the GT350 motor, the Boss 302 motor, and they put that into Gen 2. Gen 2 was 2015 to 2017. This is a Gen 2 F-150 Coyote motor. This is a 2017 motor. I'll get into that shortly. Then they came out with Gen 3, which is 2018 and up. Over the years, they obviously made more power, more torque. The Gen 3 motor has a slight increased in bore. It's just a little bit over 5 liters. So again, that's a whole other video. So obviously I sourced my motor. I went to a local junkyard here in Westchester, got myself a Gen 2 F-150 motor. Got it for $2,800, all said and done. Not terrible. I know people who got them cheaper. Most people are saying, you're looking to spend 3 to 4. Obviously, if I went with Mustang, they're going to charge me 6, 7, 8, whatever the case is. So I said, let me get an F-150 and start from there. So that's that. Transmission, you do have a couple options. The transmission, and I'm talking manual here. Obviously, the drag racing guys, street guys can go automatic. There's different options for that. Transmissions here, you could use the MT82, which came with the EcoBoost, Mustangs, the Coyote Mustangs. Now, that transmission is much larger than what we're used to with the Fox body, so you're going to have to cut the trans tunnel, get a lot of work, a lot of custom stuff in that direction, and you're going to have to convert the car to a hydraulic clutch setup. So you got the TR3650, which is what I decided on going with. It's probably your cheapest, best option. My good friend Dylan Troxel, he recommended going with the TR3650. There's also the 3550. There's a T45, T5. You don't want to do a T5. You're going to blow that up, really quickly. Those things are made out of glass. A lot of people obviously go with a T56 and a TKO. Now, those transmissions are much more stronger. They're built up. They're a lot heavier. I get it. A lot of people want a 6-speed. They're more bulletproof, but they're going to cost you thousands of dollars. And going back to my original statement, this is in theory, a low budget Coyote swap. So I chose the TR3650, which I did find here in New York, down in Brooklyn, for really cheap. Met a guy who had a 2002 or 3 Mustang, sold it, had a spare transmission. I got the transmission for $250. I'm having my good friend John at Trax Auto rebuild that. So yes, I did source the transmission for $250. However, we're going to spend a couple hundred, rebuilding it, freshening it up. Going on to the drive shaft. I did hear, again, I don't know all the options and what's facts and true and what's not, I did hear that the 0304 Cobra drive shafts you can use. However, I have a Ford Racing Performance Parts aluminum drive shaft that I ran in my Fox since 2009, 2010. I'm planning on using that. I do have to change the yoke that mates up to the transmission. The T5 had a 26 spline output shaft, I believe, and the TR3650 has a 31 spline. So I'm planning on taking that off, finding the right spline, and then reutilizing that drive shaft to keep costs down. Moving on to the headers, ton of different options. A lot of guys, want long tubes, want to build a lot of horsepower. You have to buy those Fox body specific swap headers. I've seen prices range from $500 all the way up to $2,000, depending on what K-member, what oil pan, shorty headers, long tube headers. It's just, I can't do it right now. Again, I'm trying to keep costs down. So if you find yourself some stock Gen 1 Mustang headers, which I have here, which I sourced for free, you can use these headers. The way I look at it, Ford with the Mustang can make well over 400 horsepower on a unit like this. My F-150 motor is going to be fine. Now to fit these in a Fox body, you do have to cut the flanges off, and I hear that you have to massage the firewall, I believe on the passenger side. Again, I don't mind doing a little massaging of the car. My car is gutted and caged, and it's a race car, so whatever. Let's get the hammers out, the die grinder. I don't mind. Now, just my thoughts, if those shorty headers will work, why would the F-150 headers manifold not work? This is a very tight package. Obviously, I wouldn't want to run something like this because you're going to choke the motor. This is very heavy. I weighed, it's like 17.5 pounds. But again, if you're just trying to throw the motor in, turnkey, and go, have a nice fun street car, this will probably work. This Gen 2 F-150 motor, Ford rates at 385 horsepower. So if they can do that with a unit like this, look, the 5.0 pushrod motor made 225 horsepower. I don't see why, running that just to get the car in and going, and then eventually figuring out what kind of headers you want to run. I was lucky enough to find, somebody with an S197 that was swapping to a Cook's shorty header. So I figured, hey, perfect, free is free. I'm going to get some new MLS gaskets. I'll clean these up, cut the flanges off. I do plan on doing V-band exhausts, and I got my headers. So that should help a little bit with some airflow, and it's a lot lighter than the F-150 unit. Moving on to crossmember. I currently run, or was running, with my pushrod motor, a Stifler's crossmember. They have different options for different transmissions. Obviously, I had the one for the T5. I'm curious to see if I could reutilize that and move the spacers around to fit with this new TR3650 transmission. I'm not sure yet. I'll get there when I get there. I'm guessing a lot of people just run the stock crossmember and make some modifications. Not sure. Haven't really did any research on crossmembers. Is probably the least of my worries at this point. Moving on to the K-member, I've seen people do stock K-member with some modifications. You got to do some cutting. Obviously, I'm going K-member. That's just, for me, there's no other option. And then there's another company called Detroit Speed that makes Coyote swap K-members. I'm sure there's a couple others, but a K-member, that was easy choice, maximum. So moving on to the timing cover, you have the F-150 timing cover, which is still on the motor, and you have the Mustang timing cover. I would like to use the F-150 timing cover to keep costs down. I'm not exactly sure. I know it comes into play with your alternator placement. The alternator for the F-150 is on a different side. I'm hearing it hits the sway bar. I'm hearing there's all sorts of clearance issues. I'm obviously not running air conditioning, so hopefully I have a little bit more flexibility on that. So if I don't have to spend the money for the Mustang timing cover, I won't. So I plan on keeping that. I got to figure out what alternator mounting, the whole nine with that. I did read that you have to run a clutchless alternator, so I got to find whatever, if I can find something used off an older Mustang, that's great. Moving on to the oil filter cooler unit. This is the F-150 unit. It's a water-cooled oil filter housing. Now this sticks forward out. It sticks out from the motor forward, and I'm hearing it has clearance issues. So I removed this. I'm curious to see what the Mustang comes with, if it's any different. I plan on reutilizing my old oil cooler setup. So I pulled that off. I got to figure out what the Mustang has, price-wise, and get that bolted up. Hopefully I can, find that used. I don't see that being a huge deal. Management, that's another thing I'm starting to do more research on. I originally was thinking just Ford control pack. I also, Dylan mentioned that Holley makes a standalone system. I'm looking at Power by the Hour. They make a standalone system, and they use the Ford control pack. But I also found out that if you're using an F-150 motor, there's an additional add-on harness that you have to buy to run the entire control pack, the wiring, the harness, the air box. So I'm trying to figure out my options for that. I don't plan on initially doing a full-blown standalone and getting crazy with the tuning. Again, this is kind of like a stage one for me, low budget swap. Let's get everything sourced. Let's get everything in the car, wired up, turnkey, and let's go hit the track. Maybe over the winter, in the off season, we can figure out tuning and building more power and going faster. But for now, I just want to get this in for the least amount of money possible. So I'm still doing research on management. I do want to have a conversation with Frank over at Power by the Hour, figure out my best options. Motor mounts, I haven't really looked into it. I've always ran aftermarket polyurethane motor mounts, energy suspension stuff. So I'm sure that's, again, least of my worries. Throwing some poly mounts, call it a day. Oil pan, that's another good one. I just heard that I can actually run the F-150